Hello, and nice to meet everybody at NEAH events. Our today's guest is Tatiana Lanshina, independent expert in the economics of renewable energy. And my name is Maria Stepanova. Tatiana, welcome.
Hello, Maria.
Yeah, nice to meet you at NEAH. Not for the first time, actually. We appreciate it. Actually, we start today's series that we called Green Geeks Talks. And we hope to greet Tatiana and other experts in green energy and in energy transition. But our today's topic is energy transition for Central Asia states. And I would at first ask Tatiana why. Why is it important? Why do we want to speak about it?
Central Asia is a very interesting region that is starting to change its energy sector. First of all, in the sphere of power generation, and some countries have already achieved some results. The others are following, so it is very interesting to see how the situation there changes.
Am I right that you have had a trip to the Central Asian states recently?
Yeah. Now I travel pretty often to Central Asia, like every couple of months. Yeah.
So your experience is quite, quite fresh and up to date. Okay.
Yeah, that's true.
Great. So why it is important globally? I mean, the energy transition in Central Asian states, and is there any difference for the global view, from the global point of view, and from the point of view from the Central Asia?
Well, it is important because for many years, Central Asian states were not much interested in renewables and in energy transition. And some of them have high shares of fossil fuel generation. For example, in Kazakhstan, the share of coal in the power generation is about 2/3. So it's huge, it's a lot, and from the point of view of emissions and from the point of view of developing renewables, this region is very important at the moment.
So what is the current situation? And I know that you have prepared a slide to visualize it. You're welcome.
Yeah, just a moment. I will show the structure of power generation in the region. So here you can see it, and you can see at this slide that the power mixes of Central Asian countries are very different. So, for example, Kazakhstan, as I already mentioned, has a lot of coal generation. Other countries do not generate such high shares of electricity from coal, but some of them have high shares of natural gas. Kyrgyzstan and Tajikistan have a lot of hydropower generation, and you can see that the share of wind and solar is negligible. So you can actually see it only for Kazakhstan. For other countries, it's very close to zero, and it doesn't appear here at the picture. Unfortunately, the statistics is not very fresh. So here it is mostly for 2021, except for Kazakhstan. For Kazakhstan, it is for 2022. In 2022, Kazakhstan had about 3% of total power generation coming from wind and solar. But renewables are developing very fast in this country, and at the end of September, the share of wind and solar reached 6% in Kazakhstan. So at the moment, we can say that the share of solar and wind in Kazakhstan is about 6%, and this is the highest share for all Central Asian countries. All other Central Asian countries do not have so much power coming from, so to say, new renewables or variable renewables, solar and wind. But other countries are also starting to think about renewable energy apart from hydropower. So, for example, Uzbekistan has already built its first large solar power plants. Well, they are large for the region, about 100 megawatt, but of course, for the world, these power plants are not very large, but for the region, this is remarkable. So Uzbekistan has already started to develop, so to say, large solar energy. And other countries also discuss energy transition. Some of them also take first steps, and some countries actually have carbon neutrality goals. So, for example, Kazakhstan aims to achieve carbon neutrality by 2060. Kyrgyzstan by 2050, and Uzbekistan has carbon neutrality goal not for the whole economy, but just for the power sector. And Kazakhstan aims to become carbon neutral in the power sector by 2050. And of course, to achieve all these goals, these countries need to change their power sectors a lot and also think about other energy sectors. Other energy sectors are heating and transport.
Yes, I see. So despite this graph, most of Central Asian states are on their path to energy transition and to renewables development. But as I see, they've got sometimes in common challenges. For example, energy emergency in Uzbekistan for 3 years at least. And there were also some problems in other countries with blackouts and deficit of energy. So what is in common? And why are they? Why do we try, and why do other experts try to find their common strategy?
Central Asian countries have a lot of commonalities in the energy sector. So first of all, they all lack investment, and they have been struggling to attract new money, new investment in the energy sector for years, and the infrastructure is very outdated. Many facilities were built in the Soviet time, and it means that they are over 30 years old. A lot of power plants are 50 years old, and of course, they need modernization. So this is maybe the most important commonality between those countries. And also, their energy systems were developed in the Soviet time, and at that time, it was not planned that those national power systems will be independent. And it means that, again, at the moment, those countries need a lot of money to modernize their power system and also increase the trade between those power systems, the interconnection. This sphere also is lacking investment and lacking technologies. So I think, these are the most important aspects.
Last days, I have been visited a conference in Almaty, third Almaty Energy Forum, I suppose it was called, and there was a special energy connectivity day. And it was very interesting that experts from all over the world, and mostly from the Central Asian states, were speaking about that energy connectivity and the need for some joint energy strategy for the Central Asian states. So it is not realized and it is not developed yet, but still the experts and their policymakers are already speaking about it. So just to prioritize, maybe, what is the main choice? Why is it so difficult or not easy for Central Asian states? What is the main issue, like between how to develop and what is the controversy here?
Mm-hmm. Well, interconnection would be very important, especially when there is the share of variable renewables is high. And for example, you can have a lot of solar in one region and no solar or wind power in another region, and then you can exchange the power between regions and countries. But Of course, for former Soviet countries, sometimes it is politically and geopolitically difficult to reach some consensus, but I hope that in the future there will be more opportunities and more space to develop the energy sector together and really have great interconnection and opportunities to exchange excessive power, not only between the regions of one country, but also between different countries. So, for example, if we take a look at Europe, where interconnection is developed very well, we would understand that without interconnection, it would not be possible for those countries who have large shares of wind and solar PV energy. It would not be possible to reach those high shares because sometimes you have a lot of wind energy and you cannot use it in your own country. And sometimes, like in the night, there is no sun. And if you have a lot of solar power plants, then of course you need to exchange with other countries. Otherwise, you will have sometimes excessive power generation and sometimes a lack of power.
So this connectivity actually helps to be flexible and
Yeah, sure. This is one of the ways how to increase the flexibility of the power system. And flexibility is actually another very important problem of Central Asian states. They have a lot of generation facilities that are not very flexible or are not flexible at all. Like, for example, old coal power plants, they are not flexible. And if you introduce high shares of variable renewables, it means that you need to increase the flexibility of the rest of the system. And there are different ways how you can do it. You can introduce storage, energy storage. You can increase their interconnection so that you could exchange your power with other regions and other countries. You can forecast how much solar and wind energy you will be able to produce so that you could plan and you could understand how much electricity you will need apart from solar and wind electricity. And of course, you need flexible generation, like normally there is a natural gas generation that is pretty flexible. And also there are renewable sources that may be flexible, like biogas power plants, like hydropower, and other sources, and you just need to have a good combination of different sources, those that are intermittent, those that are flexible, and maybe some share of base load generation. But today, base load generation, well, it's still important, of course, in many countries, and especially in Central Asia. But in those countries that have high shares of intermittent generation or are aiming to high shares of intermittent generation, in those countries, base load generation becomes less and less important. And in some cases, it can be even counterproductive if you have a lot of base load generation. For example, imagine if you have like 60% of wind generation in your system, and you have, for example, a nuclear power plant that generates the same amount of power all the time. So in that case, it will be very difficult for you to have a good balance with such sources of energy.
Well, actually, you mentioned nuclear, and here in Kazakhstan, the referendum will be held concerning whether to construct or not the first and the new nuclear power station, and if yes, then with what partner. So what would you say? Is it a good idea or not?
Definitely it is a bad idea. First of all, in terms of economics, so since I'm an economist, I'm also trying to take a look at different things from the economic point of view. And from the economic point of view, it's just too expensive. Nuclear is the most expensive source of energy globally, and Kazakhstan is no exclusion. In Kazakhstan, nuclear power will be very expensive compared even to traditional fossil fuel sources like coal or natural gas, and it will be definitely much more expensive than wind and solar generation.
Excuse me, what do you mean? The price of kilowatt hour, the tariff, or the capex investment, or what?
Well, first of all, I mean, of course, the price of kilowatt hour, the levelized cost of energy, or LCOE. This is one of the most popular indicators of the cost of different energy sources. And for Kazakhstan, as far as I remember, it was estimated at 35 tenge for kilowatt hour. And if you compare it to the current cost of kilowatt hour at solar and wind auctions, it is less than 20 tenge. And this 35 tenge, this is a preliminary estimation, and the practice shows that normally when you start to build a nuclear power plant, first you have some estimation for the cost of kilowatt hour, and then this cost increases because nuclear power plants are very long projects. So nowadays, I do not think that any nuclear power plant can be built in less than 10 years. And in those 10 years, of course, the economics changes, the political system changes, situation changes, and a lot of different other factors might influence the project. And even in in developed countries where not so many rapid changes are normally seen, even in those countries, the preliminary estimation of cost always increases, and sometimes this increase is 2 or 3-fold. So I would say that 35 tenge is a very, very optimistic number, and I think that in reality it will be much, much higher.
But those experts who are pro nuclear station, they say they are talking about equity and affordability of energy, that now it's a deficit in some southern regions.
Yes, but normally they just talk about it, and they do not provide any estimations or any, I don't know, economic analysis. And actually, nuclear power is always lacking economic analysis. There are very few countries for which any data on nuclear costs are available, or there are just very few indicators that can be accessible. So this sector is very untransparent, I would say. So compared to renewables, for example, for renewables, you can find a lot of data for different countries, for different power plants, for large scale and small scale, etc. But for nuclear, well, the data is not so available. Its availability is very limited.
You are talking about quite a new architecture of the power system for under the energy transition, right? So less basic load, more flexible load, and more renewables in the energy mix. But actually, this is the very difficult choice for the Central Asian states, because when they got some kind of energy crisis and they need to fight for energy equity, what to do? Either so one scenario is more coal, new nuclear power plant, more hydro stations, although there's a deficit of water, or to change that architecture, but it is kind of difficult in lack of investment, lack maybe of calculations and economic calculations and competences. Then what is their way out?
Sure. Many Central Asian countries are in a very difficult situation at the moment in terms of the further development of their power and energy sectors. Because on the one hand, they need modernization, and they need modernization in any case. It doesn't matter whether they will continue develop traditional structure of energy or they will change it and try to go renewable. So in any case, they need a lot of investment. And on the other hand, they have problems with attracting these investments because many people who live in those countries, they are hardly able to afford energy, even nowadays when it is still very cheap. And also, in many countries, there is a lack of competition and not so many international investors are interested to invest there, or they lack opportunities to invest and so on. So there is a problem with investment. And of course, in that case, it will be pretty difficult not only to attract investment, but also try to change the whole mindset, the whole system. And try to develop new technologies and try to increase flexibility and so on. So I mean to deploy all these new and modern concepts that are becoming more and more popular in the developed countries. Yeah, for sure, it will be difficult, but you have to choose actually between investing a lot of money in the old system and investing a lot of money in the new system, which is developing fast, which is attracting more investment actually, and which also can give you ideas for the wider economic sector. So, for example, at the moment, some countries like Kazakhstan, they are dependent on the energy sector. They export oil, for example, like Kazakhstan, and they can have this money to develop for other economic sectors as well. And in the future, when oil will be not so popular as today, of course, it is very difficult to imagine now, but in several decades, that will happen for sure. And if Kazakhstan still has the old structure of the energy sector, then it means that it will be not ready to integrate in the economic system of the future. It will have not so many ideas and not so many products that will be in demand in Europe, for example, or in the rest of the world. But if Kazakhstan invests money and time and so on in new energy technologies and tries to prepare to this situation that will definitely happen in several decades, in that case, Kazakhstan may have good positions in new energy sectors, like maybe in hydrogen or in producing equipment for renewables or in other sectors. And it means that the energy sector in that case might help the whole economy of Kazakhstan to develop.
Well, this sounds good. But if we are talking about the change in mindset, yes, and before these economic benefits, we need to advocate the technological benefits or just the technological possibility of such new architecture of model of and a new energy mix. So there are some certain very popular myths, so to say, concerning renewables, like that you need always to reserve them in the capacity, or about the green coal, or about that needed basic load that you argue it, or what else? The storage again, yes, big storage capacities, etc. So maybe if we advocate the technological possibility of this new system, what could you answer to these arguments?
Well, of course, some storage is needed, but maybe not in such high volumes as sometimes people think. And actually, to develop new renewables, you need a mix of different measures to increase the flexibility of the whole system, the flexibility and the predictability, and to decrease the need for base load. And this is not, of course, only storage. This is connection with other regions. This is forecasting for intermittent generation. Also, demand management. So you can give signals to large consumers of energy so that they would consume electricity in those periods when we have a lot of electricity, and they will have less stimuli to consume it in the periods when we have a deficit of electricity, and so on. So you just need to use all these measures that are available together. And then it will be not that difficult, and it will, in that case, the system will not need any backup facilities and not so much storage as well.
So you mean that technologically it's all feasible?
In the power sector, yeah. In the power sector, renewables are most developed compared to other energy sectors, to transport or to heating. And all answers to measure questions are already given. We have them. And it is clear that in many countries there are high potentials for wind and solar generation, and in this wind and solar generation can be, I would not say easily, but can be integrated into the grid if every country and every region takes certain steps to increase the flexibility of the whole system, to increase its interconnection and so on. So technically, in that case, it is possible. Yeah, there are many questions related to energy transition and decarbonization in other sectors, or so to say, hard to abate sectors. Like aviation, like transportation of different goods for long distances, like ships and so on, but industry as well. So there are a lot of industrial products that are produced using a lot of fossil fuels, and not only for energy reasons, but also because fossil fuels sometimes take part into chemical processes of production. And yeah, in those sectors, there are still a lot of questions, and not in all of those sectors, there are good and technologically available not available. There are not enough available technologies. But if you speak about just power sector, in this sector, it is clear how we can achieve, if not 100% of renewables, then very high shares like 80% or more than 80%.
Then could we name these key features, key milestones that are needed for this new energy model in the power sector, like, I don't know, grids, backups, or connectivity?
Yeah, grids are very important, and in many Central Asian countries, they are not in a very good condition because they were built in the Soviet Union, and since then, sometimes or some in some regions they were modernized, but they need, of course, the overall modernization, and it also costs a lot. So grids, interconnectivity, storage, but not in huge volumes, but it should be just reasonable volumes because storage costs also a lot of money. Flexible generation, sometimes it could be natural gas, but it would be also a good idea to try to use more flexible renewable generation, like hydropower where it is available, or maybe biogas. So biogas is not developed in Central Asian countries at all. So they have, or some of them have developed agricultural sectors, and it means that they have a lot of wastes that could be used for energy purposes, but they do not use them, and they just store it somewhere, and it might have bad consequences for the environment. So such sources of energy should develop faster in those countries, and also, as I already mentioned, forecasting is very important for solar and wind.
Is it also okay? Is it possible to forecast the solar or wind generation? How?
Yes, it is, and in many European countries, this sphere is already very developed, and these forecasts are, of course, not 100%. They cannot forecast everything, but still, their forecasting quality is very high. Like, for example, in Germany, and normally system operators use different data sets and different models, and then this actually helps to forecast with high quality if you do not stick to one data set or one model, but when you have all available models, so many of them and many of data sets.
So we just need to be up to date with our knowledge of technologies that are available. Then maybe
in Central Asian countries, it's a very new topic that is just starting to be discussed. So yeah, that it would be very important to develop forecasting as well.
Then maybe my final question. So technologically it's available, but then what steps do we need to change the mindset, or to invent it, to administrate it, to develop it?
Mm-hmm. Of course, a lot depends on the decisions of the government, because, well, energy is such a sphere where government plays a huge role. And it should be clear what path each country chooses, and whether and how fast it is going to follow this path. Ideally, it would be great if all Central Asian countries could have a more holistic approach to the energy sector development. So at the moment, for example, some aspects are not very interconnected, like, for example, the development of transport and the development of power sector. And at the moment, there are very few electric vehicles in the region, but in the future, I think the situation will change dramatically. And already today, the government should think about it, that the demand for electricity will increase not only because there are high birth rates, but also because there will be more electric vehicles, there will be maybe more electric heating, heat pumps, and so on. And all these trends, they should be taken into account already today. And so what I'm trying to say is that the whole understanding of the energy sector development should be more integrated and more holistic, so that different aspects and different trends could be taken into account. And in that case, it will be easier to integrate renewables, so you will understand how much electricity you will need in the future, how you can balance it, and so on. So it would be great if each of the countries could develop some kind of more long-term and more integrated strategies for its energy sector.
And so, as far as I see, you will go on contributing this shift in the mindset, yes, and advocate the energy transition in Central Asia.
I hope so. Maybe I sounded a bit too critical, but actually, I'm very happy that in some countries, like in Kazakhstan, the things are developing very fast and pretty positive. So, like, they already have 6% of solar and wind in the power system, and they have a goal of 15% of solar and wind by 2030. So I hope that they will achieve it and that they will be successful in the further energy transition, so to say.
Yeah, I support this hope 100%. Actually, we at NEAH are also acting for that outreach, for the education, and to raise their competences and with communication and information in the energy transition topics in different countries and in the Central Asia also. And by the way, I would like to note that Tatiana has held a practicum workshop at the NEAH site for the feasibility study of solar PV installation. So it is available on request. And we hope that Tatiana will be our guest not one time in the future. Thank you very much, Tatiana, for joining us today.
Thank you, Maria, for interesting questions and for the discussion.
Yeah. Thank you. Stay tuned.
Thank you.